Hello, all. Welcome back to Stories from History, where we go over some interesting stories from history, whether that's about people, events, places, whatever it is. If it's an interesting story from history, we're here to tell it. And today I thought I'd go over the very interesting story of the Great Depression. One which, has timeless lessons in it when it comes to stuff like economics, how people behave, how societies can recover from disaster, but also how they get themselves into disaster. It's a very fascinating time period to look through, with many interesting characters that come through. And I thought there were a lot of interesting parallels between today and those times. It was around 100 years ago, the 1920s, and we're currently living through the 2020s. So it'd be very interesting to look through and see kind of the parallels with a lot of the problems that our world have today, which started back then. So yeah, without further ado, I thought I'd talk about the Great Depression and one of the worst economic collapses in modern world history. So, the Great Depression. How the world's economy collapsed and slowly recovered. And this all began in the late 1920s, when much of the Western world believed they had entered a new age. But factories were humming with work, cities grew, stock prices climbed relentlessly. And in the USA, people spoke about things like permanent prosperity. A future where economic recessions were a thing of old. But they were very, very wrong. Because what would follow along would be known as the Great Depression, which was the deepest and longest economic collapse in modern history. And this followed the years after World War I, which were marked by rapid industrial growth, especially in the United States. And there was an illusion of endless prosperity. Factories made cars, radios, consumer goods, appliances at unprecedented speed. And credit was a very easy thing to pick up. People bought on installments. Banks lent freely. The stock market surged upwards, attracting not just the wealthy, but also ordinary citizens who wanted to invest in the stock market. Many of them believing it was a guaranteed path to riches. And because of this, stock prices rose far beyond the real companies behind them. Speculation replaced caution. And behind the scenes of all of this, cracks were already forming. Farmers were struggling with overproduction and the subsequent fall in prices for their goods because of this. Wages were not rising as fast as profits, and wealth was concentrated in the hands of a small elite. Much of the economy was fueled by debt or credit. So on paper, the system looked strong, the numbers looked good, but it was a fragile thing. And we see in October of 1929, confidence breaks. Rumors begin to spread that stocks were highly overvalued, and investors began to sell because of this. And this created a panic. And then we see on Black Thursday and Black Tuesday, millions of shares were sold. And because of this, share prices collapsed. And because of this, people's fortunes that they had tied up in stocks vanished. Stocks that were once worth so and so went much lower until they were worth nothing. And this happened sometimes in hours. Now, it wasn't this crash that caused the Great Depression. It just exposed the weakness underneath. You see, the banks that had invested depositors' monies into the market also failed. Businesses lost access to debt or credit that they could use. Companies cut their production and workers were laid off. So the world economy, the engine stalled and then stopped. And because economies were tightly connected, the crisis didn't just stay in America. International loans dried up. Trade collapsed. Countries raised tariffs to protect themselves, which made the situation worse. Germany, which was already very fragile after World War I, was hit especially hard. And by the early 1930s, the Depression had become a global thing. In America, the unemployment rate was about 25%, with similar levels across Europe. That's 1 in 4 people. This was even higher in some industrial regions. Because of this, entire communities lost their livelihoods. And what was life like during this? Well, for ordinary people, depression wasn't just an abstract economic event, it was daily survival. Many factories had to close, many people's farms failed, many families lost their homes. We see bread lines forming. We see shanty towns made of scraps of wood and metal where people began to live and congregate. Children had to leave school to work. Even parents skipped meals just so their families could eat. In rural areas, the crisis combined with environmental disaster. In the American Midwest, drought and poor farming practices created the Dust Bowl, which drove hundreds of thousands from their land, and hope drained away. For many, the Depression shattered faith in governments, banks, and the idea that hard work alone guaranteed security. And then we see the government's response, which was too little and too late. At first, governments responded cautiously. In the United States, Herbert Hoover believed the economy would correct itself. He resisted large-scale federal intervention, fearing it would undermine individual responsibility. However, he was wrong, and the economy did not recover. Instead, it got worse. By 1932, desperation dominated politics. Protesters began marching. Veterans began to demand bonuses promised to them. And social unrest grew. The old approach had failed. And then in 1933, we see Franklin D. Roosevelt take office with a radically different philosophy. He argued that the government must act directly to stabilize the economy and protect citizens. And what followed was the New Deal, a sweeping set of programs designed to provide jobs, regulate banks, support farmers, build infrastructure, and restore confidence. Public works projects employed millions. Social safety nets were made. Banking reforms stabilized financial institutions. This didn't mean that the depression ended immediately, but the free fall downwards stopped. And more importantly, for the first time in years, people believed recovery was possible. But recovery was slow. And why was this? Well, the global economy remained weak throughout the 1930s. Businesses hesitated to invest. Consumers lacked savings. And international trade stayed depressed. Many countries struggled under debt and political instability. The Depression changed politics everywhere. In some nations, despair fueled extremism. In others, it led to expanded welfare states and government responsibility for economic stability. The full recovery stayed elusive. In fact, it was war, ironically, not policy alone, that finally ended the Great Depression. Because as World War II approached, governments began massive military spending. Factories reopened to produce weapons, vehicles, and supplies. And unemployment vanished almost overnight. By the early 1940s, industrial output surged beyond pre-depression levels, and the economy was transformed. The Great Depression permanently changed the world. It reshaped economic theory, government responsibility, banking regulation, and the social welfare system. It taught a harsh lesson. Markets could fail catastrophically, and when they did, entire societies could collapse with them. Modern economic policy today was built in response to that very failure. So the Great Depression was not caused by one mistake or one event. It was the result of unchecked speculation, a fragile system, inequality, the blind faith in endless growth. It ended only when the world accepted a new reality, that economies need rules, safeguards, and responsibility, or they will destroy themselves. The Great Depression showed humanity what happens when confidence replaces caution, and it reshaped the modern world forever. So, if you liked that video, please comment, subscribe, send a like. We're still growing, so we love the support, but we appreciate all of you. We enjoy making these videos, and please guys, keep loving, keep reading, keep studying our history. Stories from history, signing out.